individual liberty. And when government oversteps, like on these policies of health care, energy taxes, card check, and the regulations that are strangling our economy, we stand up and we say, this is how it affects you. We need you to engage in the process. And that's what our country was founded on. We, the people, letting our voice be heard. So you're so important to the process. Thank you for joining us. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first speaker. He's a gentleman I met on the road. Has an amazing story. His name's Sean Danko. Some of you remember him from the healthcare debates and tours that we did. But he is originally a Canadian. He is getting his American citizenship. And he happens to be a small business owner just a stone's throw away over in Memphis. So let's give Sean a warm round of applause. Sean Danko.
Thanks, Teresa. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here in the great state of Arkansas. As always, as Teresa said, my wife and I own a restaurant in Memphis, Tennessee called the Kooky Canuck, and we are right across the street from the Peabody Hotel. I've been in Memphis now for 12 years, been in the United States, green card holder, working towards American citizenship. My wife and I employ 55 people in Memphis at our restaurant. And one of the things in this presidential lead-up that, as a Canadian, I can tell you I'm very concerned about, and that's the healthcare perspective. And I can tell you, as a Canadian, it's a unique perspective because I've lived under the Canadian system for the majority of my life. And being here in the U.S., I've had the chance to see both sides of the coin. As a Canadian, I get often asked, I go, well, what do Canadians think about their health care? And more often than not, majority of Canadians, when asked what they think of their health care, they will tell you, pretty good. We're okay with it. It's not bad. However, there's nothing to compare to. And I'll use the analogy that I often do, and it's like having a beer, and the only beer that you get is, and for those Busch Light fans out there, I don't mean any disrespect, I apologize. It's like having Busch Light, and that's the only beer you get. That's the only beer you get. So if I were to ask you what you think of your beer, you go, it's not bad, it's pretty good, it's okay. But then all of a sudden you get a chance to sample outside of that domain, and you get a chance to try different beers. And all of a sudden you begin to realize, yeah, that beer is not so good. It's okay. It's sort of okay, but it's definitely not great. And coming to the United States opened my eyes up to what's available here to the United States and to its citizens as opposed to back home in Canada. The greatest difference I can also tell you is that in Canada, healthcare is a budgetary line item on a profit and loss statement. It's a budgetary line item, okay? It has a finite number of dollars attached to it, as opposed to the United States currently, where it all depends on what the citizenry want to spend, okay? How much money are we willing to spend on our programs, our machinery, our drugs? It doesn't happen in Canada. At the end of the year, when things get tight, people wait. Machinery waits. Programs wait. And they get bumped to the year after, year following. Hopefully that, and then it gets picked up. But the wait times are a real big deal in Canada. And governments have to manage them. There are actually websites. You can go to the government, the provincial government of Ontario, and you can look up their wait time site, and it will tell you exactly how long you need to wait to obtain a procedure. So an MRI may take you an average of 30 to 40 days. A knee replacement, 60 to 90 days. Hip replacement, probably around the same thing, 70 to 90 days for a hip replacement. It will tell you, depending on which hospital you go to, exactly how long those wait times will be. It's managed on a regular basis, and it's a political hot topic. When wait times get out of control in Canada, politicians feel it, because the citizenry is sick and tired of waiting. But they don't have options, folks. There's no option. If the government says it's a 30-day wait, it's a 30-day wait. Can't skip the line. There's no express pay line. You can't buy an additional insurance plan to get you to the front of the line. It doesn't work. It's illegal. And for most Canadians, it's cost prohibitive to travel south of the border to the United States and obtain treatment on their own. The travel is expensive, and the procedures are expensive when it's coming 100% out of your pocket after you've already paid into a socialized medical system. So again, Canadians are in a tight bind. They only know what they know. But I can tell you, as someone who's lived in the United States, I'm very happy to be able to say, I want to go see this doctor. This is the doctor I want to see. And I want to get this procedure done. Can we get it done this week? Not a problem. We can get that done for you. Those are things that Canadians have never heard before in their life. There are some areas in Canada where you have to draw a lottery to see the doctor in your town. Otherwise, you're left having to travel to towns nearby to see a doctor. It's a lottery system, okay? Because the shortage is there. They can't afford to pay the amount of doctors to cover what is needed because it doesn't fit the budget. MRI machines are few and far between, again, because it doesn't fit the budget. You will also hear quite often, but it's free. But it's free in Canada. Isn't that great? Healthcare is free in Canada. It depends how you define free, but last time I checked, when I left Montreal, Quebec, my tax bracket was 48%. Okay, that's federal, provincial. That does not include my home taxes, my school taxes, or my sales taxes. Okay, that's 48% off the top of your check each and every week. It's a big deal. Your money doesn't go very far. The government decides they're going to take your money for you, and they're going to decide how best to spend it. Okay? The medical system in Canada is broke, folks. It is broke. At 48%, we can't sustain it. What's the number got to look like to be able to... And that's basic healthcare, guys. That's not above and beyond. That's not... Again, there are healthcare procedures that are not available. There are drugs that are not available. There's machinery that's not available just because it is so expensive. Okay? So 48% gets you the basics. What's it going to take to get a little bit above and beyond that? Can we afford it? No. Absolutely not. So as a Canadian that has now lived in the United States for 12 years, I'm very nervous. I'm very nervous at the direction that we're going, that the conversations that are happening of government taking over healthcare and deciding what you will receive. Folks, rationing is a part of what makes the Canadian healthcare work. It has to. It is all based on rationing. They do not have an infinite amount of money. And that is what is about to happen here in the United States. You're about to get a number attached to your health care. And when it doesn't fit, too bad. Too bad for you. And there's nowhere to go. Where else do you go? So I can tell you this as a Canadian living in the United States, be very careful. Be very careful for what's going on when it comes to your health care. I don't want to see people give it up to the government and get shortchanged. All right?
Let me ask you a real quick question, because, what I want to tell you about Sean is he's a small business owner. He has to be with his business to make sure it works, make sure he's paying the bills. And he spent, with us here in Arkansas, he's been to over 21 healthcare events talking about healthcare and what it looks like. Not because he's trying to scare people, but because he's trying to make real these government policies and what they look like in other states. And when we were on tour, and I don't remember where it was, but I feel like it was in Mountain View, his dad was actually in the emergency room. And would you just mention that? While we are, the irony was we were on a Hands Off My Healthcare tour, and this is, just tell a little bit about that story.
So my dad fell ill and was needed to hit a hospital. The ambulance picked him up and dropped him to the nearest available hospital that would take him. unfortunately, there were no beds available. My dad lay on a gurney in a hallway for 5 days, folks. 5 days. And he's not the only one, okay? He wasn't the only one in the hallway. There's multiple people laying out because there are no available rooms. And that's not a one horse deal. That's everywhere, folks. I tell people often that it's like walking back in time when you go to Canadian hospitals, because the technology isn't there, the money isn't there to refurbish hospitals and get them current and get the machinery current. It's like walking back in time. But yeah, my heartbreaking to know that my dad spent 5 days on a gurney.
Well, let's just give Sean a hint of all the sacrifices that he's made on his own time and his money to come out and talk about these policies. And I literally looped him in today, who's helping us get speakers here. So Sean, thanks so much. Have safe travels.
Thank you, everybody. God bless America.
Okay, so before we introduce our special guest, which I'm very excited to have here in Arkansas, we'll have to give him a warm welcome. I just want to ask one question. Who here stood against the government healthcare takeover? Okay. Who here stood against